To get a grant review, what do you need to think about in advance? That is what we are talking about today. If you're new around here, my name is Sarah Dobson. I'm a research grant consultant, and my team and I help early career researchers get funded at NIH. So I wanted to talk specifically about the questions that we ask our clients, our prospective clients, to consider before they sign on to work with us. And that's in part because the process that we take them through in our strategic grant review service is really rigorous. And we want to make sure that they are prepared for that and ready to get the results that we are promising them, right? We work with them in a very structured way over about 10 weeks, with the bulk of that happening in our 8-week review process over 2 rounds. And so we want to make sure that they are ready for that, prepared to deliver on their end what they need to deliver so that we can do our jobs really well and get them the results that they're after. So what I'm going to do now is go through the questions that we ask them to consider before they come on board to work with us. And these are also just useful questions for you to think about if you are planning to work with any grant consultant or grant editor, or even if you're just planning to write a grant on your own. These are really good questions to consider. I will remind you that in our service, we work with clients who are resubmitting R01 grants. And so a lot of these questions are relevant to the resubmission process, but you can definitely think about them in terms of a first submission as well. So the first question that we have our clients reflect on is, what is my plan to address the reviewer critiques? Right? So of course, we're talking about resubmissions. So we're talking about a client who already has a summary statement, who already has a bit of information about the peer review process and the critiques that the assigned reviewers had of their application, right? And because the clients that we work with had their grants scored and discussed, we also have some information about what happened in that discussion, right? So when we're asking them, what's your plan to address the reviewer critiques, we want them to reflect on how they are going to respond to all of the critiques, right? You can't just pick and choose which ones that you want to respond to. You don't have to agree with all of the critiques, but you still have to respond to them, right? And in previous videos, I've talked about this in terms of asking yourself whether you agree or you disagree with your reviewer critiques, and then what happens in either one of those scenarios, right? So if you agree with your critiques, then you pretty much know what you need to do to address those critiques. But if you disagree, that's a sign that you need to better justify why you're doing things the way that you're doing them. And so in this case, we're asking our clients to consider how they are going to respond. Do they agree with these critiques, and how are they going to incorporate that into their revision? Or if they disagree, how are they going to incorporate a stronger justification into the revision? And so what does that plan look like? The second question we ask is, how much time is it going to take you to adequately address those critiques? And so we have our prospective clients really think about, like, realistically, how long is this going to take? And again, it's not just a matter of having a plan, it's how are you going to execute that plan? And I think the key word here is really adequate, right? How are you going to adequately address these critiques? Because it does, depending on what the critiques are, it does require some real thinking and real reflection around how you're going to do that. And oftentimes it also requires quite a substantial amount of additional work, right? Whether that's publishing some papers or putting up a preprint on a particular topic because the critique is that you don't have enough sort of publications or experience in a particular area, right? It might be a request for additional preliminary data, which of course can take a bit of time as well. So how much time will it take me to adequately address the reviewer critiques is the second question that we encourage our prospective clients to reflect on. Number 3 is, have I protected that time in my schedule, right? So again, it's one thing to have a plan and to identify how long it is reasonably going to take to execute that plan, but then have you actually done what you needed to do to protect that time in your calendar so that you can actually do it, right? And I know that these questions might seem a bit redundant or, kind of getting in a little too deep in the weeds here, but there's a reason that each of these questions is, that we ask them in sequence, right? And there's also a reason why they're actually quite distinct as questions, for the reasons that I just explained, right? You can have a plan. You can have an idea of how long it takes, but until you actually map that out in your schedule and you look at how much time you have put aside to actually do that work, those are 3 separate components that need consideration and need intention, right? So the fourth question is, how does that prep time or that response time influence my target submission deadline? And this is a really crucial question, right? Because a lot of clients who come to us, a lot of prospective clients who come to us are really eager to just get that resubmission back into NIH, right? They just got their summary statement. They might not even, or they just got their scores. They might not even have their summary statement yet. And they're just, they're eager to make it into the next cycle. They really want to make sure that they turn this around quickly. But sometimes that can actually hurt your chances rather than help your chances, right? There's something to be said for maintaining momentum with a project, but what can happen is that you do not give yourself adequate time to respond to the reviewer critiques in a way that's really going to improve your chances. And so you just end up kind of delaying the process for yourself because you're essentially putting the same grant back in for review without having done enough to improve your chances. And you're just going to get the same result again in 5 or 6 months, right? So a lot of that urgency is driven by anxiety, or it can be driven by anxiety. And so what we ask our prospective clients to do is really reflect on how much of their target deadline is influenced by this anxiety or this desire just to maintain momentum, and whether that's actually going to help them or hurt them. So we ask them instead to look at their target deadline in the context of what actually needs to be done to improve their chances, right? So all those questions I just asked around what's your plan, how long is it going to take, and have you mapped it out? That all needs to be taken into consideration when you think about which submission deadline you're targeting. So even though you might really want to get it in for the very next cycle, you might actually be better off skipping that cycle and waiting for the next one to give yourself ample time to do a really good job and respond to each and every one of those reviewer critiques in a way that is truly going to improve your chances of getting your grant funded. The last question is, what am I intentionally moving off my plate to make room for this grant submission? If I'm really serious about doing this, what am I going to say no to be able to say yes to this project? In other words, how high a priority is this grant submission right now? And again, this is another one of those questions that requires a little bit of reflection and honesty, right? Because it's one thing to say, yes, it's very important, but it's another thing to actually make room for it, right? So we've already talked about, making room in your schedule and protecting your time, but oftentimes you also need to put other projects to the side to be able to make more room for the the submission that you're working on, right? So the scheduling piece or the protecting time might be a little bit of wishful thinking, and you actually need to go back and create more time and space in your calendar to do what needs to be done to really improve your chances of getting a fundable score. And so that can often require removing other projects or other responsibilities from your calendar temporarily, right? Or, or permanently, if that's what is called for. But certainly if you are saying that, getting this project funded is my number one priority, that has to show up in the actions that you're taking as well, right? So how have you made the time and space to really have it be a priority? So each of those questions that we ask our prospective clients to reflect on will help prepare them for the process that we take them through in our strategic grant review, which I know I've said it ad nauseum, but it really is a rigorous and thorough process. But at the end of that, you get a great result, right? You get what you are after, which is a fundable score on your R01 grant. And so we want our clients to be well prepared for that process and ready to be responsive, not only to the critiques from their peer review, but the feedback that we offer through our review process. And that takes time and space and planning and preparation. So if you found that helpful, I do strongly encourage you to sign up for our resource library, where you will find lots of tools and tutorials to help you write a stronger NIH grant. And if you do want to work with us down the line on a strategic grant review, you can find information about that as well in the video description underneath this video, and submit an application to work with us. All right, see you next time.